In the same vein of your show in the SAPC versus SMWX and how SMWX has become so successful.
Yeah.
Do you still write for the Mail and Guardian, number one? And number two, have you considered the idea of almost replicating the same? Because I do that to some degree. I take articles, I write them, I post them on a LinkedIn, Facebook. They get reach, traction. And at some point, it's just about figuring out how to monetize. Do we just post ads on that platform? Because that's essentially what a newspaper is.
Yeah.
And if we can do what you're doing on our social media, we don't necessarily need to be on your platform.
Yeah, I don't. Exactly for that reason. Like you see the reach and you realize that like posting on Twitter is going to get 10 times the views.
Yeah.
But also I can just do a video opinion piece, and that's in some ways even more immersive. People get to hear my voice, they get to hear the tone, and it's better than like just the stale written article that goes into some backwater of a news website.
Yeah.
So no, I stopped. I did a partnership with Mail and Guardian, likewise for a while, and then the partnership came to an end.
Okay.
And one realizes that like you end up realizing, hold on, SMWX is getting more views than Mail and Guardian.
Yes.
So like, you know,
Who needs who here?
yeah.
At some point, I had different suggestions from different people. Number one being taking the podcast on the road, which Podcast and Chill have done well on their side.
Interesting. Yeah.
Number two was writing books. There was a show on Cakenet, I forgot what it was called, but it used to profile Afrikaner business people. I think Theo Foster was the host, and he wrote a book from the interviews. Someone suggested a coffee table book. So taking some of your best guests or most viewed, taking a photo shoot, writing beautiful stories about them and releasing this book. Have you considered taking all your interviews, whether it's yourself or whoever in your team, transcribing into written so that the episode is out, but people can read, besides just audio, people can read it. And at some point at the end of every year, we do like a review, SMWX 2024, and people can actually read the book.
I have thought about that, actually. I never got around to actually executing, but I think like a few years ago, I spoke to a transcriber and all of that. It's a good idea. I'm not sure whether the book, whether it would be able to sell at the kind of scale that you would want. We have merch right now, which we're rolling out, and it's doing okay, but it's more like for solidarity with the channel than like a financial money spinner. But even that is important, you know, just people feeling like they're part of the community and what have you. But what I do think is that if you look at the conversations we've been having over time, it's going to be a really important historical archive.
Yeah.
And historians are going to go back to these conversations and be like, what were people saying who are now long dead? We can actually hear their voice. We can see them speaking. And I think it's important to preserve that archive of conversations. So I think of SMWX as an archive that people can always go back to. And one thing I would encourage people to do, and I don't know if you see this, like people are always watching the recent stuff because it's new and it's shiny. But go back and like I've been doing it for 5 years, right? There's some fascinating stuff there. Like I spoke to Helen Ziller 4 years ago.
One of your big interviews was with ex-President Jacob Zuma as an example.
Yeah, go back to that. Like it's so fascinating from a historical perspective. And the older it gets, when it's 10 years old and 20 years old, it's actually going to be like, you know, that BBC archival footage. That's what a lot of these conversations are going to become.
We need to get to written, even if we maybe get some of our viewers to put in the work and be like, whoever transcribes the best, because what's going to help with written, even though AI exists now, is it's going to be easier to translate as well into different books. And I know people don't read as much anymore, but you almost don't want to wait for other people to write what you could have written yourself and monetize.